Like Thomas said, Aaron Gluck. I am a third year PhD student at Clemson University. Um, I'm a research assistant in the Drive Lab, which we'll talk a little bit about that here in just a minute, give you a little background on what I'm doing here. Um, I did my undergrad at Boise State University in the Gaming, Interactive Media, and Mobile Technology department. It was a brand new major when I attended. And it was there that actually I was introduced to VR first day of my studies there, and amazingly, I was hooked from the start. So it's all quote been downhill from there. So I've been developing VR since 2016. So I've been doing it for about 5 years now, and my research focus personally is on accessible virtual reality, looking at for people who are blind and for older adults as well. So that's where I've been doing most of my work. Just a little bit on the Drive Lab where I work. It's run by Dr. Julian Brinkley. His research was in autonomous vehicles and human-machine interfaces for visually impaired individuals. So amazingly enough, our research focus is on automated driving systems. We work on ride sharing, and we also look at accessibility for older adults and people with disabilities in those vehicles. I get to play with fun things as part of my lab. So I have two Oculus Quest 2s, Oculus Rift, and we just got Microsoft HoloLens 2. Allows me to do some multiple research projects here in the lab, working with our participants. We also have some expensive toys. This is a driving simulator where I actually build simulations for either driving or for riding in vehicle experiences in research. And then our latest, over the summer, ended up building this. It's actually a full-scale replica of an autonomous vehicle ride-sharing experience. And so we're doing participatory design and enactment studies in this vehicle. So a little bit about the motivation for what brought me actually to accessible VR. My interest grew from my senior undergraduate capstone project, where I worked with a group to develop an application, a VR application for the World Museum at Boise State University, where people would be able to interact with a ancient Aztec codex. We made it available so that those that were unable to use their hands could still use the application. There was no standing required. And so we were able to bring those things into, and then we obviously added captions and stuff like that. So making that as accessible as possible at that time. Really, my interest grew for trying to impress my soon-to-be advisor when Dr. Brinkley reached out to me and said, "Hey, I'm kind of interested in you joining my lab because I'm looking for someone that does VR work." I said, "Hey, I've kind of thought a little bit about accessibility, but hey, why don't I try and make this application that uses no visual inputs in VR?" And that's actually where the first project we'll talk about here shortly, the Enclosing Dark, was actually born. My interest has grown through taking an assistive technology class here as a grad student, and obviously by working with people with disabilities and older adults in the lab. So why VR for me? The biggest reason number one, it's commercially available. There are plenty of studies that have been out there that have been done for people who are blind and using equipment that costs tens of thousands of dollars. It's just not affordable. So here's a system that's got 3D audio, vibrotactile feedback. It's got a built-in microphone for voice recognition, and it's got gesture and head tracking built in. And I felt like that was really the key feature for allowing someone inexpensively to one, play games, and two, interact and experience things that just haven't really been able to experience previously. So I just want to just some stats on this. There's some kind of interesting things I found over my research and time. So in 2019, someone actually estimated that there have been 1.2 million video games released across all platforms. Gamers are averaging about 2 or more hours a day of daily gameplay. The problem is there's a negligible amount, just a really tiny amount of any form of accessibility features in games. And there's even less for anyone, for people who are blind. In 2006, though, Audio Quake was actually released as the first adaptation of a mainstream video game for people who are blind. So we're making headway, just not very fast. There are over 39 million people worldwide who are blind. That was in 2010. Obviously, there's a few more than that now. In 2050, we're actually expecting to be 61 million people. So that's not a small population at all. And researchers are starting to look at this group and looking at it from a VR and gaming standpoint. So Andrade found that the gamers who are blind, they want to experience VR. The problem is they really don't believe it's going to be possible for them to experience it. And I am working hard to make that not come true. And then Granick actually found that video games have a lot of benefits, not just wasting time. So you've got that social interaction, so you're improving moods, sense of well-being. All these things are important, not just to people who are blind, but anyone who can play a game. And there have been lawsuits now about lack of accessibility. So pretty much at least the first lawsuit that I found about VR was about lack of captions. So Panara has sued HTC Corporation, which is the HTC Vive, for VR, and they're not expecting the lawsuit to actually go through because they're kind of, in my opinion, they're suing the wrong people. They're suing HTC Vive rather than the actual manufacturers of the games and experiences. So it'll be interesting to see how this turns out. And then Robles versus Domino's Pizza actually is really making made waves because Domino's was ordered to make their website WCAG accessible or compatible because there was lack of screen reader access to the website and the app, so they couldn't order pizza. And so with these things, developers need to really start thinking about accessibility because we've got and show that it's wanted, it's needed, and if you're not going to do it, you are going to get sued. So it leads to some interesting things and problems. So who's thinking about VR and accessibility? Sadly, very few developers are. From this image was this last fall for a conference on indie game developers. Accessibility is not listed at all in any of those aspects. Some research is finding that there's a lot of confusion about how to design for accessibility, and there's just not guidelines for teaching you how to do it. So, and then there are some researchers that are doing it. Like I talked about earlier, as researchers, we're able to afford more equipment and more expensive equipment than you would usually find in someone's home. And so while that research is good, the problem lies is it's not always truly accessible. There are beneficial or becoming research labs. So Microsoft Research is one of the big, research labs that's researching accessibility. They've done some work with providing for low vision, people with low vision, and they're also doing some research, people with motor disabilities. So there is some research being done in that way. There are some developers that are starting to do it. Alchemy Labs, they have added one-handed mode to their vacation simulator, and I believe the job simulator as well. They also have non-audio feedback that they're bringing in, so they are trying to make it accessible. So it's kind of piecemeal, but they're one of few that are making that direction. The nice thing is that there are some places that are smashing it when it comes to accessibility. So Last of Us Part 2 has been listed as the most accessible game ever. There are over 60 options, accessibility options and features built into this game that you can turn on or off as needed. So it is possible. This game proved to me, and I hope it proved to a lot of developers, that it is possible to do this. You just have to put in the time and focus to make it happen. But the reviews have been great from that community. The people that are definitely thinking though about it are those who are sidelined, those that are unable to use VR.
I'm watching your presentation
So
on my Oculus.
many of them are being kept from their desired peer group. They want to be a part of the gaming community, but they're just not able to. There's obviously concerns of lack of equal access. And one of the important things that I have more and more started taking to heart is this idea of nothing about us without us. And so that's that idea that those who are visually impaired want to not only enjoy the products, but they want to be a part of the development and design processes as well. They want to have their input and statement there. All right, we're on. So this finally leads to my research. So my first project I did, as I mentioned before, is the Enclosing Dark. The Enclosing Dark, it started honestly from the premise of what would a game look like for a person who's blind? What would that end up being? How can we do that? What type of things can we do? So for this one, I started with just a choose your own adventure style of gameplay. You're exploring different mazes. It's very exploration based. There's some minor interactions, but I didn't want to start with anything too complicated because I wasn't exactly sure how I was going to do it at that time. So as I started playing and messing around and exploring, I looked at what has become the main gameplay mechanic for it, which is passive sonar. So as you're playing the game and exploring those mazes, going around you is passive sonar. So as you get close to a wall, it's going to ping at you. We'll watch a video briefly about this here in just a few minutes. So the passive sonar works actually. We'll get this in just a second. So the other way that you can use this in the game, you actually do have a gun. There are a few things you can shoot if you so choose. You do not have to. But it also allows for echolocation, so you can actually use the gun to determine distance. The bullet fires as you would expect from a weapon, and then if it hits a wall, it's going to hit that wall after a certain period of time, so you can kind of judge where you're at in the environment. One of the biggest things, though, that we quickly found is the idea of cognitive load. So we wanted to avoid that. Cognitive load is how much thinking are you able to do all at the same time before you start losing the ability to process additional information. And we found this actually from our passive sonar system. The passive sonar originally started as a system that would send out basically a ring around you in 360 degrees. Anything that was hit by that ring, walls, any objects in the way, all at that moment in time pinged when they got hit. The problem became is there were certain times in certain areas where that sonar would tag 3 to 4 different objects in the play area, and they were all getting information at the exact same time. And so it made it actually extremely difficult to determine where things were in the environment. So I ended up changing that to a rotary style sonar, so it actually still spins 360 degrees around you, but now it's shooting in a straight line. And then when it actually hits something, it stops for a moment, does its ping to let you know where in the environment that it hit something, and then it moves on and continues to spin around you until it hits something else. That way, people were able to, our playtesters were able to figure out what they were able, or they were able to pinpoint things in their environment a lot better, and made it a lot easier and not as confusing for what they were trying to do. So for the Enclosing Dark, accessibility really was our key in that, because I wanted to make this for people who are blind. I know that there's different levels of blindness, so I wanted to go to the far extreme, knowing that if I went to the far extreme, then everything that was a little less extreme would be should be covered in that. So I made it with absolutely no visuals. When you, as you'll see here in just a few minutes, when we show a video of it, it's a black screen. So whether you have no usable vision or you have full usable vision, you see exactly the same thing. There is no difference. And so to do that, we really focused on this one on 3D spatial audio, that ability for the audio to be able to allow you to pinpoint things in your environment, whether once again it's the ping sensing of a wall, so you can kind of know where your walls are, to being able to use the echolocation of the bullets, or if it's the audio of the creatures that are lurking in that darkness. We wanted to be able to allow people to pinpoint those things. So we use spatial audio heavily. We did use voice recognition for it, so you can ask the system questions rather than having to use a menu. Menu was one of the big things that we worked on. So we do have a voice recognition menu. We also have a manual menu that speaks to you, uses text to speech to provide information that way to the users. And for this, we used a lot of nuanced haptic feedback, actually. The feedback system, haptics tend to be a on or off type situation where, you're going to feel the full force of that vibration if you are attacking something or something's attacking you. So we actually explored nuanced haptic feedback by looking at how can we, through haptic patterns and different levels of the haptic feedback, can we replicate textures? We actually looked at replicating the gentle movement of a butterfly's wings on you in this situation for more of a healing type situation in the gameplay. And so we found that nuanced haptic feedback allowed us to do a lot of providing information without, once again, that visual information. The problem with haptic feedback, though, is you definitely need to make sure if you're including it that you have a training period of time. Hearing a duck quack, you kind of know what that is if you include that into an environment. Feeling a very gentle vibration at a certain type of pattern is not something that we deal with on a daily basis. So providing that feedback ahead of time and teaching users how to do it is very important. So those were our takeaways from the Enclosing Dark. That one is still in development. I keep making a little bit of headway, but I'm doing it all on my own and trying to do it while doing my PhD. It makes for a little bit of a difficult time. So the pretty much opposite of the Enclosing Dark turned into the Racing in the Dark. This was a research we did actually this last winter break. And it really stemmed from the question of Enclosing Dark was something that's slow paced. There's no rush. Take your time. And so it's easy to provide that information. But what happens when you need critical information delivery. What happens when you have a vehicle moving at 100 miles an hour along a track with 4 other opponents that are racing with you? How do you provide that split-second decision making without that visual input? And how do you provide that continuous navigation along a narrow path? How do you do that along a track? And so that became the question. I wanted to see, how can I provide that critical information? You've got to be able to make a decision in a split second. You're going to crash right either into another car or into a wall. And so that was what led to the idea of Racing in the Dark. So for Racing in the Dark, it relies extremely heavily on actual haptics. We didn't do as much with audio in this, although there is audio, obviously. But haptics we found was the key. We did do some searching or trials to see how it worked, to say, all right, make a right turn now, or a slight left. But there's a lot of problems with that. It takes a little bit of time to say left turn. And how do you differentiate how much of a left turn that is? Is it a 10-degree left turn, a 35-degree left turn, a 90-degree left turn? How do you give that information clearly and in the right time with audio? And it just didn't work. And so we started playing with haptics with this, and that's what led to haptics being the main input of this. The nice thing is that modern VR systems all include handheld controllers with those electromagnetic vibration motors. While there are different systems out there, and we are moving to hopefully a non-handheld controllers, there's going to always be vibrations somehow. So we knew that we could do that, and it would be around for a good long time. We also realized the hand is just a great source for being able to detect vibration frequencies. I mean, we're used to touching different things, and we can figure out a lot just through our touch. So, so using haptics really provided a strong basis for us for providing that information. And so our haptics actually provides the player with that constant steering information. We wanted to make as realistic of a steering system as possible. And so you use the controllers, you raise them up and down, and that determines the turning. But so vibration is going to let you know if you're approaching a wall, you're drifting out of your lane, you're entering a turn, you're approaching another racer. All that information that you need to be able to respond to at a split second's notice is provided through the haptics of the controllers. And that haptic information is mostly just through the vibrational amplitude, so the strength of the vibration. So we've got it a continuum. Obviously, I just list low and high here, but literally we can dial it into whatever it needs to end up being. So a low vibration, just a nice gentle vibration, is just a slight turn, or you're getting close to that correct hand position. And that high vibration, you need to crank that wheel as hard as you can to make that sharp turn. So we've been able to dial it in that way and allow our racers to make their way around the track at, like I said, a simulated 100 miles an hour. And so we tie that haptics to hand gestures. So like I said, we replicate the real steering motion. So you're raising your hand, you're basically like turning a steering wheel. You're raising your hand or lowering your hand based on the vibrations. And the system is continuously tracking that vertical distance between the two. And so it knows that if there's almost no difference between the height of the controllers, it's just driving straight in whatever direction you point it in. And then if you need to make a right turn, your left controller is higher. If you're making a left turn, your right controller is higher. Once again, just like you would in steering a car. And that greater the distance between the two controllers, up to a maximum, determines the sharpness of the turn. So if you raise that controller up pretty high, you're going to make that sharp, sharp turn. And that's all going to be taught, once again, shown to you or delivered to you through that vibrations. We knew that there wasn't just haptic information that went into it, so we also used head gestures. We wanted to replicate driving a car as much as possible. So we built in head gestures because as you drive a car, you do use your head, you look up into your rear view mirror, and we replicated that here. And so if you raise your head up, verbal information from the game is going to let you know if any of the racers are approaching you from behind or within, I believe it's about 100 meters behind you. So if you look up, it'll let you know that someone is starting to gain on you. And then you can turn your head left or right, and that shows looking out your side windows. And so it gives you verbal information again about players to your left or right. We went with verbal information on this because this wasn't information that you needed to interact with or make any decisions on in a split second. This was all information that we knew you could take a couple seconds to process and then make decisions on if you needed to make a decision. So we took advantage of that. So for accessibility in this, very, very similar to the Enclosing Dark, we just changed our focus. So once again, no visuals. It is a completely black screen, which we'll show a little video of that. I do show some video of what's behind the curtain, as I like to say. But if you're actually playing the game, there is no visuals. But we focused on that haptic feedback. We knew that haptic feedback was going to be our best option for providing that instantaneous feedback. And then we wanted it to feel like you were driving a car. So we used the gesture tracking so that hands movement to give that same feel as a steering wheel, and then the head gestures of looking in the rearview mirror and then looking at the side windows. We do have voice recognition in this. Although we are looking for another system for that, we use Watson AI, and it's just not as good as we would want it to be. But we do that so you can ask the system questions as you're driving. Once again, for important information, or at least not in time important information. We do use text to speech, so it is speaking to you, giving you information about where you're at. We do use a little bit of 3D spatial audio, so you can hear the other cars as they approach or as you pass them, but it's not nearly as much as the Enclosing Dark. So at this point, actually, we're gonna go ahead and watch a little video. So should work out perfectly. It's about a 9-minute video. I show both. We might skip a couple parts, but there's a video screen behind everyone. At least that's here in Mozilla Hubs. If you're in
A Laughing Lance Studios production. Welcome to the Enclosing Dark, a VR auditory adventure. My voice is raw from the screams for help over the last few hours, days, weeks. I don't even know how long it's been since the earth swallowed me and I fell. Darkness confuses my mind. I know I've awoken multiple times, but whether losing consciousness due to exhaustion or fear, I don't know. The only thing I know for sure is I should be dead. There is no way a person could fall for that long and survive. But as far as I can tell, I have only sustained a few scrapes and bruises. I must have fallen asleep again, but I'm not sure. Eyes opened or closed, the view is always the same. No. I know that I slept, and then something woke me. Not a touch, but a noise. Maybe it was just my imagination, or maybe the sounds of a rescuer. Ow! What is that? A gun? How did this get here? Maybe I bumped into it while I slept, and that was the sound that woke me. No, definitely not. Something's found me. I must escape.
Menu opened. Vibration control. Turn vibration on. Vibration is now on. Current game menu. Enemies remaining. 1. Enemies remaining. Elapsed game time. 26 seconds. Bullets fired. 0. Bullets fired. Enemies killed. 0. Enemies killed. Quit game. Current game menu. Menu closed.
What was that thing? I'd say I'd never seen anything like that before, but the truth is I still haven't. I needed to try and determine what the thing was. I had to. So, summoning the last of my courage, I ran my hands over its now lifeless body. I don't know what I was expecting, but it definitely wasn't the warm, mucus-covered skin. Bile burnt the back of my throat as my hands found the gunshot wound that killed the beast? A demon? A monster? I have no idea. I can't think about it any longer. I must escape this darkness. I just hope that that aberration was an evolutionary mistake and that no others exist. How long have I lain here? My strength is gone. I guess this is where I will die. If only I had died from the fall. Quick, in pain but for a moment. This slow, drawn-out death is definitely worse. I feel tears flow from my eyes and know the end is near. Even Aragam has abandoned me. My eyes close again, wondering if this is the last time. I'm jolted back to consciousness as something grabs my hand. I struggle to pull it from their grasp, when I realize that it also feels like a normal hand, not the gnarled, clawed hand of the creatures. My hand is squeezed tightly, and I hear,
I knew I'd find you.
Driving in the dark provides no visual information. The black screen you see now is exactly what players of Driving in the Dark see. We took advantage of the built-in features found in today's commercially available VR systems: spatial audio, haptic feedback, hand and head gestures, and voice input. The combination of these interfaces allow players to experience both virtual reality and car racing. During this demonstration, most of the screen will stay black to remind you of what the player is seeing. Additionally, we will have a video window showing a player in VR playing the game, along with a video window showing what is happening visually in the game behind the curtain. A tutorial begins the game instructing the player how to use all interfaces in preparation for racing around the track.
Welcome to Driving in the Dark. If this is your first time playing, or you want to go through the tutorial again, say learn, otherwise say start.
Learn. Here, players will learn how to steer the car using haptic feedback and hand movements.
Before you start speeding around the track, let's show you how to drive your new race car. To turn the car, you will raise and lower the controllers much in the same way a real steering wheel works. To turn left, raise the right controller higher than the left controller. To turn right, raise the left controller higher than the right controller. You will know when and in which direction to steer the car based on the vibration of the controllers. When a controller vibrates, it is alerting you to raise that controller higher than the non-vibrating controller. Let's try a medium left turn now. Lift the vibrating right controller until the vibration ends. Well done.
And gain more information about their surroundings with head gestures and voice commands.
While you're driving, your pit crew will keep you informed of other racers in front of you. If you want to know if any racers are coming up to pass you, just tilt your head back to look up into your rearview mirror. You can also check to see if there are racers on your left or right by turning your head left and right. Finally, you can verbally ask your pit crew questions. Say word to have all the verbal commands listed.
After the tutorial, the race begins. The race is a 3-lap race around a 3.5-mile long track with 4 basic AI opponent racers.
Ready, set, race.
Distance.
You have completed 65% of this lap.
Spatial audio is used to provide the player auditory information about the other racers' positions, and the player's pit crew provides verbal information about racers in front of the player's car.
You are gaining on a car in the center lane. Now in right lane. You are rapidly approaching a car in the center lane. There is a racer directly to your left.
While driving in the dark needs more testing, refinement, and content before it would be ready for release to the public, we have shown that through innovative interfaces, a person with visual impairments can play video games in virtual reality.
Lap 3 time 2 minutes and 7 seconds. Final race time 6 minutes and 18 seconds. Congratulations, you finished in first place.
All right, so that's 2 little videos. I guess little is probably not the exact right word on those, showing exactly kind of where we're at for that. And so the question becomes is, where am I going from here? So the main project that we're working on right now is we're continuing along with Racing in the Dark. In the next couple weeks, I'll actually be starting to work with a legally blind co-designer. Finally been able to make some progress into finding a participant to help me with that. And so we'll start going over design iterations, making sure that everything works as I believe it should. We started this project during the COVID-19 shutdown, so we were not able to use any participants previously. So it was a lot of closing our eyes, or if we felt like we were cheating, putting something to cover our eyes to get that same feel, but we definitely know that that just gives us a basis point. So we're going to make sure that all the pieces work as we hope they will. Once again, with that legally blind co-designer. We hope to finish the gameplay. We're going to look into that better voice recognition options. We want more consistency, and honestly, Watson AI is an expensive option. It costs per, I think, about 1,000 words. So we need to deal with that. Then we'll do some more intense play testing. We'll get it out to hopefully more of the community that way. We'll actually get some real voice actors to record. Not just my bad voice acting. Our goal is to make it available to the public. My hope is going to be probably in the next Well, I'm always shooting for sooner than I think it'll happen, so I'm going to say probably, hopefully, in about the next 18 to 24 months. At least having something out there. It won't be probably a full game, but at least maybe a couple tracks. One of the things though that we do want to do with it is make the assets that we are developing for it available to other developers, so that they can bring that into their own racing games to make it more accessible. And then I want to explore first-person shooter games, see how that would work for making something for people who are visually impaired. So I figure that's kind of the next, Racing in the Dark was the level before Enclosing Dark, and I feel like first-person shooter would be the next level from there. So to wrap up, what I've hoped to show from my research and what's really inspired me for it is I believe it's possible to create VR games, and I feel like I've shown that it's possible to create VR games that require no visual information, that they're playable and usable. And so, while more accessible hardware would be beneficial, we also wanted to show that it is possible to use it just off-the-shelf, commercially available VR systems for accessibility for people who are blind. And really now is the time for developers to embrace that accessible VR application development. Before the policy states that it has to happen, start looking at it now. It just takes time, energy, and being willing to kind of think outside the box of how do we provide that information. So because I'm a PhD student, I have to have references. It's just built into my DNA now. So here's some references for papers that I talked about in this. And I just really want to say thank you to Thomas and Meryl for reaching out to me to do this talk. I'm very humbled by that. And I also want to thank everyone who's been working behind the scenes to make this happen in Transcriptionist and getting this streamed onto YouTube. So I think I'll leave that. At least on my clock, I ended 1 minute before that warning you were going to give.
Precise. What a precise presenter. Yeah, thank you so much, Aaron. And I'm gonna hit the 3 button on my computer to give you a round of applause. If you want to give a clap for Aaron, you can hit 3, or you can use the react button inside of Hubs. But yeah, that was awesome presentation. And yeah, I definitely saw activity on Twitter too. You have some really exciting and interesting mechanics that you've put in there. I learned a lot. So I'm going to take a couple questions for you from the YouTube stream, and then we'll open it up here too in the room. So we had a question on stream from Deb Mayer. Can/should Enclosing Dark be used as like a training exercise or something in, say, like an empathy lab? She's also saying she knows there's strong reasons not to do empathy labs, but do you have a thought on if that could be used as an experience for helping people build empathy for people who are blind?
Yeah, it's a tricky question. I have some friends that are doing empathy work. It at least wasn't what it was designed for. It would definitely, I could imagine it being a byproduct of playing it. But I think the idea more, one of the things that I've heard said a lot is that VR is used to provide empathy about people who have disabilities and things like that. And the problem is, while that's a great thing, the problem is it's not being built for them to use. And so, while yes, I think this could be used for that, I really want to focus on the aspect of providing an option for people who are blind to actually play and experience.
Absolutely. Thank you. We've got a question from Cody Fitch. Do you feel the spatial audio is good enough in current headsets to create a good simulation of a physical space and the nuances that go with it? Or do you feel that the technology still has a ways to go?
I would say that, so from a basic standpoint, I think it works great. You need to be paying attention if you're using it to not put too much ambient noise in there that's going to interfere with what you're trying to do from a 3D audio standpoint for interacting with the environment or anything like that. So where it has, I think, the most room to grow is from that standpoint of being able to handle a lot of audio input and using that 3D spatial. But if you are cognizant of it and you're thinking about it, then it does work. It's obviously there's always room for improvement.
Great. We have some more questions from YouTube, but I'll also open it up here in the room. Is there anyone here in the room that has a question? Feel free to go off of mute or type into the chat. Just take a moment here.
Hey, Aaron, this is Dylan. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Hey, Dylan.
Hey, so thanks for the great talk. I'm wondering, for a lot of the design techniques that you showed here, like using haptic feedback when you're approaching a turn, how many of those do you think would be possible to implement as accessibility features in a mainstream racing game that does have visuals? And how many do you think would only work in a no visual scenario?
Sure, that's a great question. I've actually been curious about that. One of my hopes with it is to actually be able to get to the point where you could add this to a racing game with visuals so that everyone could play at the exact same time and you're racing against everyone else. The trick with it becomes is that you do have the haptics are coming and running a lot of kind of computations in the back end. You're having to track the player's speed, the distance to it, to whatever obstacle it is. So definitely need some more testing to go with that. But my hope would be that it would be possible to make just one full game where everyone could then play.
Awesome, thank you.
Yep.
Cool. We've got a question here from Aiden in the
Aaron.
chat. Love to hear your thoughts on developing accessible VR interfaces which replicate real-world interfaces, for example, the mirror in a car, versus developing VR interfaces which are natively virtual, i.e. the sonar in the first game.
Sure. It's from what I've played with and experimented with and that we're looking at, we're really trying to find what's going to fit the situation. So replicating the real world environment, we wanted to give that feel of driving a car. We definitely didn't want this to let anybody think that would be legally blind, that by playing this you would get good at actually driving a real car. We hope that no one would attempt that. But we really wanted to replicate that feeling in this situation because it was such a specific environment that we were trying to replicate. As for using the sonar in the first one, the sonar really is just kind of, to a degree, a version of echolocation, and actually visually impaired individuals can learn to do that for themselves. They can snap and then listen to the echolocation feedback around them, so kind of like a sonar system. We didn't want people to have to click as they went through. So I think really the application of the accessibility kind of needs to fit the environment that you're building, and does it make sense?
Thank you. Anyone else here in the room have a question you'd like to ask? All right, we'll take this one that came in from Harv. Aaron, you mentioned the cost of IBM Watson. For SenseSpeech, had you the opportunity to compare it against Amazon or Google's or any others?
I haven't yet. My biggest concern is anybody that, obviously I'm on a major shoestring budget. And so those, anything that's going to charge, in my opinion, per X amount of words, 1,000 words, 1,000 recognitions, whatever it is, is going to get costly over time, especially if it's actually released to the public. So I know there are other options out there, like you said, Amazon and Google. I didn't compare them. I went with Watson because I've used Watson before, and so I knew how to set it up. And I was in a time crunch to get this created, do some initial testing, and actually get a paper written on it. So it would be good to look at other options, and that is part of what we're going to be doing, is trying to figure out what the best option is for us going forward in this situation.
And we've got a question here from Merrill Evans. So you mentioned more accessible hardware would be beneficial. What would you say are some features, or just like a commercially available hardware that's missing or that should be considered?
Sure. This kind of actually ties into research that I'm doing right now with VR and older adults. So simplicity is their buzzword when it comes to the equipment, and making sure that it's accessible for them. We had individuals that had hearing implants, not cochlear, but cochlear style implants, that the strap from the Oculus Quest 2 went straight across, so they could not use the head strap and the hearing device at the same time. So, those are important things. The other things is the number of buttons on the controller. I think to a degree, the 10 buttons on an Oculus Quest plus 2 joysticks is just kind of a layover from what is just become the way controllers are made. But I did find, I can't remember what system it is. There's a new VR system coming out that actually has 12 buttons. And I think that to a degree is getting a little overkill for most people. So being able to really just provide what's needed. There's a lot of ways to do input in a virtual environment that I think simplification is going to be a buzzword to a degree for making those devices more accessible.
All right, thank you. We're going to take one last question, the last question of the night, or the day, from David V. Have you explored the use of binaural glasses, no visuals at all, just audio in your research?
So I haven't used those just because to a degree, I mean, that's what the VR headset is, or I can make that the VR headset. I do know that they're out there. I haven't looked into what type of controls you can attach with them. The reason for VR specifically is I had all those specific built-in features. The obviously the 3D audio, spatial audio is there, but the gesture tracking, all the different inputs, the voice recognition, all that's just right there with the VR headset. So it would be an interesting idea to look at, but I definitely want to make sure that they would be easy enough to support gameplay.
All right. Well, thank you again so much, Aaron, for the presentation tonight. And I didn't want to say anything until we got to the end, but pretty flawless here for the technology working. So really happy that the slides and the captions and everything worked great in your presentation, and your video also came through. Great. So again,
awesome. Thank you so much again for having me. Thank you all for coming. I really appreciate it. And especially thank you to, I know there were quite a few people from Boise State that at least made it to the YouTube one. So I just want to say thank you all for coming out and supporting.